So again, that's an 8-foot wide shed, and we are 10 yards away. So about 4 feet wide at 10 yards, and then obviously it'll get bigger with distance. And this is low power, and there's obviously a lot of photonic barriers in the city, but even low power is completely fine. I guess just give you some practical, here is dual low. So again, in an urban environment. Just giving you guys a quick orientation to what you're looking at. This is a 100-yard backstop. This is 200 yards. We have a 100-yard silhouette. Occasionally I'll pan to the left here. This is 50 yards, but at an angle, so probably closer to like 60, 70 because of the angle. To the left of this silhouette, that's actually 400-yard backstop. This is 300 yards on the right, and then right just to the left of that strobe is a 500-yard backstop. Trees are closer to about 550, possibly 600 yards beyond, because they lie beyond that last target. So giving you an idea of what we're looking at. Now on the 200 and 300 yard targets, we just have cardboard trying to, brown cardboard trying to eliminate the amount of IR bounce back. But the 400 and 500 yard targets, there is a white and the cardboard in hopes that it will help you guys see it a little bit better. The illuminator on low. So this is the widest illuminator setting. You can see the 100-yard target just fine. 100-yard backstops, 200-yard, 300, and 400 is kind of getting lost. 500 we know where it is because that's strobe, but I would say it's not super in view. So I'm narrowing down. This is illuminator low for, you know, what it's worth. So 100 is visible. Now I'd say we're getting a little punch to the 400 and 500. I'd say it's a bit of a wash, but we can narrow down further. I mean, this thing will go into basically be a laser beam. And even on low, we are getting positive identification. Definitely see those 400-yard targets now. 300, no problem. 500 as well. So even illuminator low, not an issue. So here is dual low. Shining at the black backdrops on purpose, because when we hit the white, see how much more reflection there is, or the cardboard. That's why I use the cardboard up close based on you guys' feedback. So 100-yard target, this is still on low and it obscures a lot of the target, and that's where I really point out, you know, you don't always need a super strong laser. So even on this low setting, you can see that laser. Those trees that I'm shining right now are probably closer to about 600 yards, at least 550 for sure. And there's no issue. Real quick, I will narrow this thing. Again, it almost makes its own laser. So even on dual low, this thing has more than enough juice to illuminate and aim just fine. So that's about where that 500 silhouette is. Okay, so here is the M6TR illuminator high. Go all the way wide. No issue. We're actually kind of overpowering things. No issue whatsoever. Definitely illuminates. Even you can see the 400-yard target in the background there. Not a problem. So even on the widest illumination setting, I think this has got more than enough juice. I don't even know if there's going to be a point in narrowing it, but I will show you that this thing can absolutely narrow. And I'm just trying to move my camera to where I don't burn anything into these tubes. So bear with me on that. What I'll do real quick, we're gonna turn this PVS 14 gain down. So you can see a little bit more of the illuminator. You can see that silhouette 500 yards to the left of the strobe. And if we really wanted to narrow, this would be an excellent long-range night vision platform, you know, to supplement clip-on night vision, because this thing will focus to a ridiculous beam. I mean, here's all the way focused. It basically makes a super strong laser. So widening it out so you can kind of see how clean it is. Now I do want to point out there's a good amount of spill, so you're going to want to keep that in mind. If you're using it around brush, you're going to get a lot of IR bounce back. And for what it's worth, this is 50 yards right there at an angle. That backstop there, 100-yard silhouette. You can see the 400 to the left, 500 in the distance, and this was the PVS 14 gain turned pretty far down. I will now turn it down almost completely. You guys can see a little bit more. Now we're basically only properly exposing what's in the illuminator pattern, but maybe this gives you a better feel. It's pretty clean, honestly, and the fact that you can narrow it. LaserSpeed makes some pretty good stuff. Now what I will do, especially while the gain is turned down, go into dual high. So 100-yard backstops there, 200-yard right there, 300-yard. This is 100-yard silhouette, 400-yard backstop, and 500-yard silhouette right next to that strobe. So pretty spicy, just to kind of give you an idea of what the gain would probably be closer set to while you're running. Your surroundings aren't totally blacked out. So there you have it, the M6TR. Next, I want to get into what I did to reliability test these units. So first thing I always do with these kind of lasers is right out of the gate, brand new out of the box, I pattern where the visible laser is relative to the IR laser. So that tells us two things. First, it's going to tell us how good they did in terms of attention to detail and overall quality in terms of perfect laser alignment. In a perfect world, the distance, the physical distance of the IR laser and the vis laser should stay perfectly parallel off to infinity. Now obviously lasers slowly actually diverge, they get bigger, there'll be some overlap eventually, but we're not talking about that. I pattern this at 10 yards to see where they're at. Now the other side of that is, since I pattern it right out of the box, after I put rounds through it, heat it up, I again check it at the end of testing to see if they shift, because if it does shift, that tells us it's not going to hold zero even if the body of the laser stays perfectly clamped onto your rail. The good news is both of these units have perfectly aligned diodes compared to where they are physically located in the housing. So neither of them shifted, they started perfect, they ended perfect. And actually, this is the third model of LaserSpeeds that I've tested, and they've all been perfectly aligned. So LaserSpeed knows what they're doing in terms of diode alignment. I just want to point that out because even a $4,000+ L3 NGAL that I tested was not perfectly aligned. So I'm not trying to say that these are better than an L3 NGAL, but just keep that in mind. They really know what they're doing when they build these units. So diode alignment aside and seeing if I can get those shifted, the other part is how well do these things hold zero? So what I do for that is I mount one to a handguard. I did use a Geisley handguard, something high quality. I did not see torque requirements for these units, therefore I torqued them down to 30 inch-pounds to stay consistent. That seemed kind of reasonable to me, so if you think that's too much, too light, sorry, that's what I did. That's a data point to report to you as well. And then after being mounted, I simply just enjoy my range day, do shooting, do drills. We put over 400 rounds of 5.56 through the unit that I had mounted to verify zero retention, and fortunately we had no issues. So within the margin of accuracy I can have for aiming with a laser at a distance of 20 yards, I would call this zero retained, especially because there's a little bit of thermal influence as things heat up. I tried to measure the rig that this was mounted to pattern it at reasonably close temperatures, but things aren't going to be perfect. Conditions do kind of change. Now the final thing that I tested was actually a tracking test. I did about 3 on each unit actually because of how I have to film, the multiple angles for Hollywood magic and stuff. So 3 tracking tests on each unit, and what that tells me is if you need to make adjustments for your zeroing purposes and you actually want to count on clicks and go different directions, do the clicks actually repeat the same distance each time for ease of doing that? But also it kind of tells us the quality of materials inside the housing that they used. And these turrets feel very solid. They feel really good, to be honest. And the tracking test was perfect, 3 for 3 on each unit. So a total of 6 tracking tests done, and flying colors, it returns exactly where you started. All I simply do is mount this to a vise, essentially a big block, and then I start it on the bullseye. I move 30 clicks up, 30 clicks right, then 30 clicks down, 30 clicks left. And I make sure it ends where I started and good to go there. So that is another little metric I like to provide with you guys. Okay, so with the data out of the way, for those that are curious to get my personal take, because I've already gotten a lot of comments on Reddit, and I do stay active on Reddit. For those that are not aware, check me out there too. I want to share my overall thoughts in terms of, you know, use case and function, things to think about to further go down the rabbit hole if this device is potentially right for you or not. First and foremost, just kind of going with my initial impressions. When you take this thing out of the box, it feels like it's built like a tank, because it is. LaserSpeed, like I said, they make really good stuff. This thing feels solid. There's nothing on this that feels cheap or like the durability is gonna be an issue. So that's my initial impression, and that's kind of been true of all their products. I do like their products in general. I'm happy to see that ergonomically they finally got it in the direction it needs to go. Some of their other units were very, very large, so drastic improvement here, and I think that's why this is so anticipated. Especially for the price point this thing comes at, it kind of fills that gap where you're not spending thousands. You know, it's not cheap, but it's also not irresponsibly expensive for a supplemental device for those of us that probably don't shoot at night super often. So now in terms of quality and output, the LaserSpeed is spicy. It's very, very, you know, as shown by the metering data. If you didn't see that earlier in the video, check it out. It's very, very strong. In fact, for the IR laser, you're in the ballpark of 30 milliwatts, which is a very, very strong laser. Some of the other civilian options I have are less than 5 milliwatts. Just keep that in mind. So when you have lasers that strong, yes, you can see that laser from very, very far away, but you have to keep in mind how practical that's going to be for closer ranges. In fact, I see myself probably using this thing in dual low more often than I will dual high, because even in dual low, I was able to illuminate a target at 500 yards with more than sufficient laser output. So dual high kind of gets tricky because that laser is just so strong, and you always risk damaging your night vision when things are that overpowered. So just keep that in mind for your potential use case. Again, these are kind of my thoughts after using this and being someone that's used a lot of units. This is a very high output unit.